It's Summer Valley FM's annual bingo night. The cards look the same as usual, square with smaller squares inside with words inside of those, and some familiar entries are on the cards. Someone mentions my top 10 films of the year being Chaos, Tom having at least 2 widely acclaimed awards contenders in his top 10 that aren't in mine, and when reasoning I say something like, I liked it very much, it's just not on my list. Tom is baffled by my sense of humour when I have an it's alright but it's not that funny comedy concerningly high in my top 10. I haven't heard of one of the films on Tom's list. Tom has heard of one of the films on my list. He hasn't seen it. I make my argument and he's happy for me that I enjoyed it. We agree on at least one film and Paddington is mentioned. And so without any more waffle, get ready and eyes down for a full house unless you're driving, operating heavy machinery, in the opticians or doing some other task that requires your visual sense. And joining me once again to call out the results, it's Tom Beasley.
Hello. Happy to be here as always. I think we could probably look at a full house. Although no, I think my list is actually very mainstream this year, and I think you will have at least heard of everything on my list. So I don't think there'll be any curveballs.
Okay then. How are you doing? I should ask.
Oh my goodness. I'm now a dad of twins, so that's happened this year. That's hard, he says, in a hot take, a spicy take that will baffle everyone listening. Yeah, twins are really difficult, but they're lovely. I've got 2 wonderful twin boys, and they are fantastic, and they are both making my life and ruining my life simultaneously.
Well, I'm sure they'll be glad to know when they listen back to this in about 20 years' time.
Yes.
Good year for film, though?
I don't know. It feels like quite an odd year for film. I think there have been some amazing films, some really great ones that aren't even on my list that you know I've really enjoyed watching. So a film that's not on my list I really wanted to get on my list is Deep Cover, the Amazon Prime comedy about improv comedians who become involved in an undercover police thing. There was a Swiss film called Late Shift set in a hospital which I absolutely loved, which didn't make my list. The Ballad of Wallis Island didn't make my list. I'm really upset about that because I loved that very much. It's one of those years where I think the big films have been a bit of a letdown. And I think in those years, it's easy to go, oh, it hasn't been a great year for film necessarily. But actually, the weird stuff and the sort of genre stuff has been really good. And I think my list kind of reflects that. So I would say not a great year for film, but a film with lots of great films in it.
Well, it sounds like you've got quite a few genre films coming up. I have a list predominantly made up of a lot of indie films about people being sad. So you've got a nice hour to look forward to while we record this. I was in a happy mood this year. Actually, to be fair, I was quite mentally well this year. But shall we get into it? We'll go through each other's lists one by one. If something is on our list that matches, we'll just say, oh, it's on my list. We'll get to it later. I think I started last year. Would you like to start this year?
My number 10 is Sorry Baby.
That is going to be on my list.
Oh, exciting. All right, well, we'll get to it later then. But
One
yes,
on the bingo sheet already.
Yes, that's it. It's a late-breaking entry on my list.
My number 10, this may be one that you haven't seen. Good One.
No, I don't think I have seen it.
This is a wonderful film, hence making my top 10. And it's one of those films that kind of took me back to when I was starting to properly get into film and go into like the indie cinemas and just doing whole weekends of kind of like foreign films, documentaries, all these small indie films that barely anyone had heard of. And Good One follows a teenager who is going out on a hiking weekend with her father and his friend. And it's not quite coming of age, it's very much she's confident of who she is, she's happy with that, while the 2 male adults with her aren't. And there's insecurities coming through. They want to put on this big machismo personality. And then they meet these 3 younger hikers at one point who seem to be much more athletic, just better at hiking. And those insecurities come out again because, well, are we not man enough then if we're not as good or experienced as they are? And it's very much about the generational gap, about a gender gap, and who is confident in themselves, who's happy, who's not, and all of these things playing out against each other. There are moments of uncertainty, of tension, of worry for the main character with the people that she is surrounded by, and the things that they say, the things that they do. There's one particularly uncomfortable moment with the friend of her father. But again, it all comes out in this very, very calm, emotionally intelligent way. This is the debut of writer-director India Donaldson. And it's something, as I say, so emotionally intelligent, so in tune with what it wants to say. And I was really, really struck by it, again, because it's not a coming-of-age film when it so easily could be.
That sounds really fascinating. I've, art about masculinity is something I've been very fascinated by this year. Obviously, we had Adolescence on Netflix at the beginning of the year, which is we don't talk about TV on this, but it's by far the best TV show I saw this year. And then so that came out, and then a few months later I became a father to 2 boys. So that sort of stuff is something that's really forefront in my mind at the moment. And there's at least one film on my list which kind of talks to that in a slightly strange way. But yeah, so anything about kind of gender dynamics and particularly about what it means to be a man, I'm really fascinated by at the moment. So I will be adding that to my watch list forthwith.
Shall we go to your number 9?
Yes, my number 9, and it's possible this will appear on your list. In fact, I'd say it's quite likely. My number 9 is Sinners.
You would be wrong.
Oh, interesting.
We're at that point already.
Yeah, we've done it. We've hit it. Tick off your bingo sheet. Good. Sinners is great. So for the few who don't know, Sinners is Ryan Coogler's newest film, set in the 1930s, following Michael B. Jordan as twin brothers who open a sort of juke joint, which becomes a kind of musical sanctuary for the African American community, and is then set upon by musical vampires, led by one of my favourite actors in the world, Jack O'Connell, as a truly terrifying vampiric villain. It's just a proper film, I know, in that sort of Harry Styles, a movie that feels like a movie kind of way. But it's one of several entries actually on my list from this year that just is a genre film that does really interesting things with its genre. It's one of those films that has more highfalutin critics going, well, it's not really a horror film, is it? No, it is a horror film. It just has a brain in its head, which most horror films actually do. Great performances all round. Michael B. Jordan is amazing twice. Jack O'Connell is great. Haley Steinfeld is loads of fun in it. Wumi Masako is fantastic in it. It's just a truly tremendous sort of white-hot hit of genre filmmaking. And it has one completely unexpected scene in the middle of it, a musical sequence, which kind of really disappears into magical realism in a way that's so fascinating and so wonderful. And it's one of the best individual scenes I think I've seen in a film all year. Ludwig Göransson doing the score again, working with Coogler again, being wonderful again. It looks brilliant. It has all of the kind of brutal violence you'd expect from a horror film like this. It's really thoughtful. It's really surprising. It's just a really excellent bit of filmmaking, and I'm so thrilled that it did so well financially, because it shows there is a real appetite for bold, original genre filmmaking that can be intelligent and artful, but also really commercial.
It is the case of I liked it very much, it's just not in my top 10. I saw it, I keep a list throughout the year of kind of the films that I thought were best, and I revisit them in kind of November, December to put together my top 10, which I know some people would argue against and say, well, you know, if you loved it, you loved it, and then just put your top 10 from that. Yes, that scene is absolutely one of the scenes of the year, and it wasn't in that list for stuff to revisit, but even though I liked it very much. But I still, you know, went back and watched it a week or two ago, because, again, it had such a great critical consensus. And I was struck by it more, you know, visually, by the score, by pretty much all the things you mentioned there. I still, you know, again, still not quite in my top 10, but I was struck by it more. And particularly, I think the first hour, knowing where that was going and what that was, because none of that is in the marketing, pretty much. And I think a kind of wise decision not to make that the case, really. And I think the final 30, 40 minutes is really propulsive. And again, from that visual aspect, looks great. Again, a film that I really like, just not in my top 10. Instead, my number 9, it is a horror film, and I think the scariest film of the year, Restless.
Again, I haven't seen it.
This is a horror film with no jump scares, no real gore, nothing like that. It is all straight naturalistic terror. Lindsay Marshall plays Nikki, who is a woman who lived next door to her parents. Her parents have passed away, and in move a group of young people. And they have parties all night, every night. Initially, she just thinks, oh, well, it's them, having a housewarming party. And then it goes on and on and on. And tensions begin to rise with the neighbours. They start to get aggressive and angry. And she starts to go mad because she's getting tired, losing sleep, but in a very different way to how you have been with young people in your household.
Yeah, I was going to say, this actually sounds quite cushy compared to the life I've been living.
But again, she starts to get more tired and grow increasingly mad and frustrated, and then starts to make decisions based on that of how to tackle this, how to stop it, which I just sat there. I remember seeing this in the cinema for the first time, just almost hands over my eyes, which I tend not to do, almost gasping out loud, almost trying to stop myself from saying out loud, no, don't do that, that's stupid, what are you doing? Over and over again, because the panic and the terror and the fear and the tension is just so high in this film, and it doesn't do anything hugely kind of out there, again, in terms of fantasy. It all stays realistic and naturalistic, and yet it still manages to make for a very funny ending that fits perfectly in what this film is.
It sounds fascinating. It sounds like a more realistic version of a film I really loved, but lots of people hated, which was Darren Aronofsky's Mother with Jennifer Lawrence. I thought it was a physical experience watching that film. Gaspar Noé's climax is another example of, I think, a similar sort of thing. Yeah, kind of a real physical experience of watching a film, which I always really love. So again, my watch list is growing by the second.
Well, before we grow your watch list perhaps a bit more, do you want to go into the first of your song requests?
Yes, the first of my song requests. So I usually kind of pick songs semi-randomly for this. But this year, so as well as having twins this year, I sadly lost my dad at the beginning of the year. And so the three songs I've chosen are artists that my dad introduced me to, artists who I love and thank my dad for. So the first of those is the band that everyone's dad introduced them to, which is Queen. And the one I've chosen is Crazy Little Thing Called Love.
The Just a Little Bit Random review of the year is continuing. We're going through the top 10 films of 2025. We've done 10 and 9 already. It'll be on Listen Again. It's fine. For now, though, Tom, do you want to go to your number 8?
Yes, we're sticking with horror, actually, because my number 8 is Bring Her Back.
Okay, not on my list, but it features angry Mrs. Brown, so...
It does, yes. Sally Hawkins, as those of us who love the bear have not seen her ever before. So this is the new film by the Philippou brothers, who made Talk to Me a few years ago. Great Australian horror film. And it's a sort of weird kind of occultish thing where two step-siblings are... their new foster mother is played by Sally Hawkins, and she is, it's fair to say, a little bit strange. And they uncover all sorts of disturbing things about her and the other child who is in the house. It's just, the reason this is on my list is because one thing I really value in... So I love all kinds of horror. I love kind of meta postmodern horror. I love comedy horror. I love silly slasher horror. But I also love genuinely nasty horror. Horror that feels legitimately evil. And I think legitimately evil is the best two words I can use to describe Bring Her Back. It's a film that feels so horrible and so, like, nasty and prickly and scary, obviously. I didn't know Sally Hawkins had this in her to be this scary and this frightening and this disturbing. And, you know, if we lived in a just world, she would be Oscar nominated for this performance. She will not be, and that's not a surprise, and it's not an indictment of the Oscars or anything like that. It's just that they don't get horror, and that's kind of fine, I suppose. I'm not going to say anything else about what happens in Bring Her Back, because I was consistently surprised by every moment of it, and particularly by how far some of it goes. I just loved it.
Yeah, no, she is fantastic in this film. All I'll say is there's one moment where you hear a noise off screen, a kind of clicking, and you're already expecting the worst, and then you see it, and you're...
Yes.
Just one of the most disturbing images of the entire year. I liked it very much. There were some people saying that some of the more videotape-based stuff should have been seen a bit more for context. I think it's shown just the right amount. It's the fact you don't know a great deal about it that makes it as scary as it is.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I didn't need loads of hefty exposition.
My number 8 is On Falling.
Have I seen On Falling?
Yes.
Yes, I have. I've been whispered at to say yes, I have seen it. Yes, I have seen it. It's the Amazon-y, warehousey one. Not Amazon. It's a company very much like, but not Amazon.
It is legally different from Amazon Company number 12.
Oh, but before you start, can I just say, I don't get to do this line very often. I liked it very much, but it's not on my list.
Wonderful. Don't worry, you'll be saying the complete opposite in a couple of minutes. We did have a conversation earlier in the year where I told you there was one film in my top 10 that was probably going to be my film of the year, which still is, which you thought was okay. And there was one film that I loved that you absolutely detested, and Bridget Jones is not in my top 10 anymore, I will tell you that.
I did not like Bridget Jones at all.
On Falling, on the other hand, I tried to pitch a feature to this for a good long while about the film's depiction of loneliness, because I've spent a good deal of the past couple of years, and kind of this year I spent trying to come out of a state of isolating myself after a good few years and not quite being so lonely. How I done at that, I don't fully know. I need to do better, I know. But there's something about this film which truly understands that state, and kind of, in this case, feeling trapped, both in the lens of the immigrant experience and also in the work-life balance, where you don't really have any of the life because it's being too outweighed by the work. And when I first saw this, it was at LFF, and someone came up to me and said, "But what was the scene with the cakes? I don't get it." And I sat there and I thought about it, and there's a moment where she's called in sick to work because she's got a job interview, and it goes disastrously because they ask her about her hobbies and she can't answer because she hasn't got time for any. And it's such a...
That scene,
Yeah.
They let it go on for so long and it's so bleak.
It's such a crushing, horrible moment. And brilliantly performed by Joanna Santos. She's brilliant in this film. And I sat there and I thought the moment with the cakes, the moment in the makeup part of Boots, those are moments where, number one, she's treating herself because she doesn't get the opportunity to do so. She's hoping that she gets the job. She's expecting to, and so she's treating herself in advance because this is what she can do if she gets the job. And there's an element of hope and just, again, taking those opportunities. But also, there is part of that loneliness. Just simply, even if she knows she can't afford it, going to buy those cakes because it's some form of social contact. Just buying something, talking to the person, saying, "Can I have that one? Can I have that one? That'll be that much. Thank you. Here you go." That's some form of social contact. And I very much recognise that, and I'm trying not to be downbeat or bleak or just, oh, woe is me, but I very much understood that, and again, it's such an accurate, brilliant depiction of isolation and loneliness that gets across the worry and the fear and just wanting to see her do well and get out of that situation. I think it's a great, great understated film.
Yeah, I think that point you made right there at the end is the crucial thing. You want her to do well, and you almost don't realise that the film's having that effect until you get to that job interview scene, and you realise you're rooting for her so much. And I think the thing about the loneliness in it that hits so hard is that it's a depiction of, and a really smart depiction of, loneliness while surrounded by people. And I think that's really potent. And like everyone who's seen the film will have a sort of different moment that kind of resonated with them. And there's a scene where a group of kids have been given a tour of the warehouse, and the lady from the company who's giving them a tour says, "Oh, we could stack everything sort of logically in orders, but we like to mix them all up so that it's a bit more fun for the employees." And it's just a moment of such kind of corporate dehumanizing bleakness that it really kind of cut to the core for me. I think it's a really fascinating film and really well made and really well acted.
Your number 7.
My number 7 is The Long Walk. I didn't realise quite how genre I was going with this list, but here we go.
Not on my list.
I think it's weird. It seems like after I had, this really happy experience of having babies, that I just sought out really horrible, bleak films, whether it's Bring Her Back or The Long Walk. So, Stephen King adaptation. It's in this dystopian future, or I think it's a dystopian past. I think it's set in the 70s. Sort of Hunger Games style. Boys are sent to do this challenge where they just have to keep walking for as long as possible, and if you stop walking for a particular period of time, then you're killed. And it's kind of last man standing wins a wish of their choice. And so for most of the film, as the title suggests, you're just following these boys as they walk and the interactions between them. So the main guys are like, so there's Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson, who is so brilliant in this film. He's just a star and he's wonderful. And a lot of it is just the guys talking about their lives, and I love that the film isn't overly detailed about the society in which they live. It kind of lets you piece things together as you go along. It's just a load of guys talking to each other for 2 hours, and occasionally one of them gets brutally murdered.
Occasionally?
Yes. Frequently. And it's just so bleak. And if anything, they make it so. For those who've read the book, there's a big change at the end to the story, and I think it just makes it bleak. And I kind of at the time I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, and I hadn't read the book, so I went to look up what the ending of the book was afterwards, and I went, oh, actually, I can see why that's different. And I've actually kind of come round to the film's ending because I think it matches the times we live in. So when it was originally written by Stephen King, it was a Vietnam War allegory, essentially. And obviously now you can't help but look at it in terms of where America is now. And I just found it relentlessly horrible, and I loved it. That's a real theme of my list this year. I found it relentlessly horrible, and I loved it.
This was something that came up, partly a couple of times on Kermit and Mayo, and I think we've talked about you listening to that as well. And I felt a little bit, I'm not saying it's the defining quality, it is an unhappy, kind of bleak film, as you say. But at least in the kind of slight camaraderie and some of those conversations that crop up between those kind of teenagers, those young men on the screen, I think there is a slight sense of hope to this. Did you find that?
Yeah, I think so. And this is the film I alluded to earlier when I said one that talks about masculinity a little bit. Because I think there are kind of real different shades of masculinity in the way these guys speak to each other. But there is something about the walk as a kind of optimistic thing for these guys. They're really optimistic about it. They think, oh, this could be my chance. And there's a really kind of poignant moment where they all talk about, the choice to put themselves forward for it and how it's not really a choice because of certain expectations placed upon men in this society. Which I found really, really fascinating. I think there are elements of hope. I do think the ending snuffs out a lot of that hope. But yeah, I don't think it's always a bleak experience as you're watching it. I think it almost creeps up on you just how horrible it is.
Yeah.
Which seems weird about a film where people are kind of periodically shot dead. But yeah, I think... I was just really fascinated by it, because I went into it going, I'm really interested by this film, and I'm excited to watch it. But I wasn't prepared for how powerful I found it. And I don't know, I've spent most of the second half of this year in an incredibly heightened emotional state. But yeah, it really snuck up on me. I was absolutely kind of knocked to the floor by it in a way that I wasn't expecting.
I saw that nighttime hill sequence. There's nothing occasional or periodical about that. My number 7, we're moving on from the bleakness. Nice, happy, light film. And I do genuinely... I thought this would be in your top 10. You mentioned it towards the start as not being there. Number 7 for me, The Ballad of Wallis Island.
Yeah, it's really good in it, this film.
This genuinely, I think, should be in the awards conversation. And I think if they had the money and the ability to be able to push it, they could easily have got nominations for original song, adapted screenplay and supporting actor for Tim Key. Tim Key gives one of the best performances of the year, because there is so much emotion balled up in this man who is making constant jokes and puns as a kind of distraction from his loss, his grief, as he gets his wife's favourite artist, her favourite musical duo, to come and perform a solo gig for him on an island that he owns. because he managed to somehow win the lottery twice.
Yeah, it might be my favourite joke of the year in any film. The reveal of the second lottery win is so funny.
And, you know, again, a man who just goes around and has a curry and then just somehow utters the words Dr. Curled Shipman. I think it's wonderful and something that really, I mean, the music genuinely feels like real music. I know that sounds like an odd thing to say, but there is so much effort and detail and emotion put into the music. It's as if the characters themselves have actually made it, as if they thought the characters were making... Well, I mean, I've listened to the soundtrack so many times. Raspberry Fair is a brilliant track. I love it. But there is so much joy and warmth in this film about moving on or learning to let go, bearing the past in mind, remembering it, but learning to let it go so you're not constantly stuck in it. And it looks at it in three different ways, through Tom Basden's character, Kerry Mulligan's character, and through Tim Key's character. I just think it's such a wonderful British... I think it might be my favourite film of the year. So this is a list, for me, I think best and favourite are different things. And I think that The Ballad of Wallis Island is my favourite film of the year. And it's one that I am going to rewatch a number of times for years to come. I just think it's wonderful.
I do think every word that comes out of Tim Key's mouth in this film is absolutely genius. Those little, like you mentioned, the curry one, the little asides are just so funny, and he just sort of throws them away as if they're nothing. I love that. The reason it's not quite on my list is I actually think it works better as a comedy than it does as a drama, and some of the stuff in the last act didn't 100% work for me. But it's a really brilliant film, and I'm really glad I saw it, because I had to kind of go out of my way to find a cinema showing it, and I'm really glad that I did, because I enjoyed it very, very much.
Shall we go to your number 6? Almost at the halfway point.
So my number 6 is, in true film critic style, I have to say, and this is a film I saw in 2024, Memoir of a Snail.
That is on my list, and I love that you've got it on there as well. My number 6 is Train Dreams.
Yes, which I again saw recently.
One that I presume then not on your list.
No, it's okay. Not on my list. But again, I liked it very much, but it's not on my list.
One that really snuck up on me, I think, this one, because I went in knowing nothing apart from the fact that it had good reviews when it was just dropped in cinemas with no advertising, as is Netflix's way, and then dropped on Netflix with no advertising, as is Netflix's way. And it's a shame, because I wish I'd seen this in cinemas, because I think this is one of the best looking films of the year. Yes. And it has this narration by Will Patton that it seems so grand and seems like it has such great scope and scale. And in many ways it is capturing just the story of a life, but one that's happening against, the changing face of early 20th century America. The Great American Railroad is being built, but then 10 years later, the Greater American Railroad is built. The main character, Robert Grainer, played wonderfully by Joel Edgerton, has very little to say, yet it's such a physical performance. He's carrying the weight of life on his shoulders, the weight of tragedy relating to his wife, played by Felicity Jones, and his young child. And they all go through tragedy and loss and feel like they're floating, trying to find their way in the world, but floating somehow underwater, trying to find a place in the world that is constantly changing and moving and doesn't seem to have time for people, where someone comes along with an act of revenge in an extremely emotionless way. It's such a wonderfully observant film, and again, it is the story of a life, a kind of simple life that is made to seem so grand in the way in which it's told, and I think that's the particular... It feels like, and it's adapted from a book, of course I've not read, but it feels like it's taken and it's trying to replicate one of those great classic American novels, and it's all the better for it. I was really profoundly struck by it when I saw it. I just think it's great, and the more I thought about it, the more it's crept up on me.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really wonderful film. Like, as you said, absolutely visually stunning. I think the obvious comparison point is The Revenant. Similar sort of setting in terms of visual style and that kind of the contrast between the wide vistas and the really boxy aspect ratio, which is, you know, a really tried and tested way of sort of depicting kind of isolation and claustrophobia within a wide space. That central performance is, as you said, absolutely wonderful. I think I love that contrast between that really grand narration and, as you said, the mundanity, and almost beyond the mundanity, the obsolescence, like you suggested there. You know, he dedicates a lot of his life to building this railroad, and then the narration just goes, well, then they built another one 10 years later, and everything he had done is a very dangerous job, as we see in the film. Um, Everything he had done was for nothing. But the grandness of the narration is because for him, everything that happens, as mundane as it seems to us, it's his life. So for him, it's the most important. It's true for any of us. Our life is the most important thing happening to any of us.
We're at the halfway point. Shall we go to your fifth best film of 2025?
So my fifth best film of 2025 is again a film I saw in 2024. I think it was actually a New Year's Day release, 2025 in the UK, and that is We Live in Time.
Interesting, not on my list. Go ahead.
Often each year there's a film that is released in the thick of award season and doesn't get nominated for anything, that I'm baffled to not see it nominated for things. And this year it was We Live in Time. So it's directed by John Crowley, who made Brooklyn, the Saoirse Ronan film, which destroyed us all emotionally a few years ago. It follows Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh as a couple, and it's a kind of non-linear look through their relationship and their lives. And as the trailer makes clear, there are difficulties with illness and various dramas. It's beautiful, this film. And we kind of talked about this a little bit with Train Dreams a moment ago. It's beautiful in its mundanity, because so much of what it shows is just what a couple are like. The chemistry between the two of them is just unreal. You completely believe them. And because it's a British film, and it's very, very overt in its Britishness. So, you know, he's an like works in IT for Weetabix, and there's something so funny about that. And the start of the film is him like buying a chocolate orange, and there's just something so beautifully British about that. But I love the contrast between again like we talked about with Train Dreams. It's actually a really good comparison point. The enormity of these life events mixed with mundanity. So there's a scene in like a doctor's office where some absolutely devastating news is given, and then 5 seconds later they're talking about which chocolate in a box of Celebrations is best. And I just love that, because that's so human, isn't it? To go straight from these enormous sweeping life moments to something as simple as, you know, whether the Maltesers are the best thing in a celebration box. I think, yeah, I don't understand why these performances weren't recognised in the award season, because I think they're both absolutely amazing. Florence Pugh is like just out of this world as an actor, and she's wonderful in this. I love the non-linear storytelling. It was criticized a little bit actually for that structure, but I think it works. It's like, because when you look back on a life, you don't look back on a life linear in terms of everything happening after the next thing. You look back in fragments, things you remember. You know, if you sit and chat with someone who you've not seen for 10 years or so, you don't remember what your life was like with them chronologically. You remember, oh, do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when this happened? Do you remember when this happened? And I think that's what's happening in this film. I can't wait to revisit this at some point, because I found it so powerful.
Yeah, I saw this in 2024 as well. I think there's 3 films on my list that I saw in October 2024, and those have kind of very much stayed with me, and I've seen them again once or twice since. This one I've only seen then, and I can't remember. I remember there's a scene where they're in the bath and Andrew Garfield reaches for a pole, not a tube, but a pole of Jaffa Cakes, and I, of course, greatly approved.
Yes.
And I remember liking it. I don't think I quite loved it. I think that structure slightly got in the way for me, at least to start with. I think it works better in the second half than it does in the first. And maybe that's because I got used to it, but I think also the way in which it works in the second half, it just feels slightly better put together in terms of going for that emotional build-up, because it has a better aim, I think. But I like it. Again, those performances, yes, are very good. Yeah, I like it. I'd be hard-pushed to remember a huge deal about it, though. My number 5 is Alpha.
Yes, which I haven't seen, and I am very, very sad that I haven't seen it, given my affection for this director.
Bear in mind, I'm the idiot who hired out an IMAX to show a colleague Titan, knowing that I would make a great loss, and did. I like this very much. I mean, I like Titan. I don't love it, but I did it just because I knew it would freak him out, and it did.
Yeah, it was Titan was my favourite film of whatever year it was that it came out.
This is a much more restrained body horror than Titan or even Raw. Both of those 18 ratings. This is just a 15. A good deal in it relating to AIDS. Some people have pointed out COVID in the way in which the central disease is working in this film, as people who have it start to turn into marble statues and they'll cough up dust. And there's a moment of real shock when someone's back basically just shatters almost. And it is a film about generational fear and trauma and generational ways of dealing with worry. As the main character, wonderfully performed by Melissa Barros, I think is 13 in this film. Not her, but the character is, I think, meant to be about 13, 14. And she may have this disease after she's given a dodgy tattoo in terms of the way it looks and the fact that it could have been a used needle. And she could be carrying this. And it's her fear of, well, if she does, what then? How long does she have left? If she doesn't, everyone thinks that she does. And there's a real emotional moment that's also quite shocking, in which blood just starts to fill up a swimming pool and everyone rushes out and flees. And it's one of the most visually affecting moments, I think, of the entire year. I sat there, I was really taken in by it. I wasn't sure where the final 20 minutes were quite going, or at least particularly the very final stages, and I don't think I fully understood them the first time I saw it. But I understood them emotionally and what they wanted me to feel, and that's the most important thing, that I was still there emotionally, I still felt what I think the film wanted me to feel, and I was still totally invested in it, even if I didn't fully understand what it was trying to say. And I think above anything else, Julia Ducournau is using her body horror not for shock, although it can be shocking at times, particularly in her previous two films, but it can be there to emotionally boost and tell a story. That's why she uses it. That's why it works so well. And I found, again, I realise I'm in a slight minority when it comes to this film and just how much I love it. But I really, really got on with it. I really loved it, and I was really struck by it. And maybe in part because I went in thinking, oh, well, it's had a couple of meh reviews. I've got a lot of time for it.
Yeah, I don't need to add this one to my watch list because it's already very much on my watch list.
Well, before we continue, do you want to go to your second song request?
Yes, so my second song request is just an all-time classic. And again, an artist my dad introduced me to, so it's Chuck Berry, Johnny Be Good.
The just a little bit random review of the year is continuing. We've had some slight agreements already. One of them is about to come up again, I think. But before then, Tom, shall we go to your fourth best film of 2025?
Yes, this one is my most unusual and most me pick on the list. So my number 4 is Final Destination, Bloodlines.
Okay, tell me about your Tom and Jerry movie.
Yes. No, that's it. I kind of think I can do any better than that. It's a Tom and Jerry movie, and it's brilliant. Final Destination is a huge part of why I love horror movies. I pretty much trace my love of horror movies back to sitting in a wood tech lesson in year 7. I never had a flair for wood tech. never particularly enjoyed it. I remember in that lesson, several of the people in the classroom talking about Final Destination. And I think, off the top of my head, the third one, the roller coaster one, had just come out. And so they were going over their favourite graphic scenes from the first 3 films. And I was just like, I need to see these movies. They sound amazing. And that kick-started a love of that franchise and a love of horror. This one, they're returning to the franchise years later. And the twist on the format this time is that there's not one big disaster and then death picks people off afterwards. Death is basically wiping out a family because that family wasn't supposed to exist. It's so silly. Oh, it's joyously stupid, and I love every second. It's Tom and Jerry. It's people being whacked with things, and there's blood, and there's MRI machines, and everything's really inventively brutal. But it absolutely wears its stupidity on its sleeve, and I can't help but love that. And then you get the cameo from Tony Todd in probably his last ever film, and it's so unexpectedly poignant. It's like he's talking about the notion of death, and like, he was clearly ill when he was filming it, and I cried. I cried in the middle of a Final Destination movie because Tony Todd did this monologue about death, and I just like lost myself. And then 5 seconds later, I was like laughing because someone had just been whacked in the face by a big bit of metal or something. It's I love this franchise to my core, and this was just so unexpected because I thought it was just going to be sequel slop, but it's so fun. It's so fun and so stupid, and I just adored every second of it.
It is indeed a very silly film. I sat and I laughed a good way through. I mean, there's the opening sequence, and then when you think it's all ended, suddenly just a piano drops on someone, and that tells you what film this is. And I roared laughing at that. Very much worked for me. I like it. It is big and silly and dumb and gory and almost anything you want from this series. It's very good indeed.
Yeah, no, I want it on the record that I don't expect anyone else to think this is one of the 10 best films of the year. I'm fully aware that it's just me and that everyone else went, that was fun, I'll never think about it again. But for me, it was really important.
I'm unfortunately changing up the tone quite a bit. Going back to one that you mentioned already, my number 4 is Sorry Baby.
Yeah, it's just... So again, this is an awards contender I saw late, and I just think it's quiet and brilliant, and... Given how dark the subject matter is, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, it's so funny. The fact it's so funny is a towering achievement.
It's a film not of optimism, but with optimism. Because you go from seeing details of the central assault, you don't see it happen, and you get this truly painful shot of time jumping forward until she stumbles out of the house towards her car in this tracking shot, which is just utterly painful. You get it, and it's called The Year with the Bad Thing. They don't ever explicitly, or at least the central character doesn't. And then you get something like The Year with the Good Sandwich, and just finding that glimmer of goodness, and John Carroll Lynch in a very, very brief role finally showing some understanding. And it's a film with a lot of people not understanding and not showing any real empathy, only informal conversations, whether at the hospital right after or at the college, following a student who is sexually assaulted, raped by her professor. Eva Victor is brilliant in this film. I mean, directing, writing, they are great. And as you said, it manages to be funny. And as a film about... I've never fully known how to fully describe it. The word that's coming to mind at the moment is coping. As a film about... it brought a lot up personally. I loved it. I have so much time for it. And again, because it's a funny film, because the humour is to the side of everything that's at the core of it. It is to do with her adopting a cat, and again, those little things, those small things that can help you get through something.
Yeah, I echo everything you've just said, and I think Eva Victor, they are just incredible to have put this whole thing together, and then to star in it as well is just incredible. Like, I think I said this about a film earlier as well. Everyone will have the moment that hit them in a particular way. The whole segment where the character is up for jury selection, and there's a whole thing about whether what she's been through will affect her ability to serve on a jury, and it for me, that sequence perfectly encapsulates everything we're talking about. That the seriousness, the comedy, and the comedy being to the side, like you said, of what's happened. I just think it's so intelligent and, like you say, profound. A really simple story, but and it's also about the importance of friendships. whether it's the relationship with Lucas Hedges or whether it's Naomi Aki's character, like even the John Carroll Lynch thing is just like a friend in the moment you need it, even if that friend happens to be a stranger. Yeah, it's just wonderful. What a great little film.
We're in the top 3 now, finally. Number 3 for you.
Yes, a late-breaking number 3 for me. I saw this, I think, 48 hours ago. Marty Supreme.
Okay.
Oh, this is really good. In a year where the other Safdie brother delivered a film that I would describe as in The Smashing Machine. A fascinating film in that it's so inert. Like, I don't know, why are we telling this story? Marty Supreme is the opposite of it inert. Marty Supreme is like a Safdie film in the way that we've come to imagine that with Good Time and Uncut Gems and those sorts of things. It's like a 2.5 hour stress attack of a film. Timothy Chalamet as a table tennis player, an American table tennis player in the 50s, where table tennis isn't really a sport in America still now that gets a lot of attention, but it certainly wasn't in the 50s. There's not a lot of table tennis in Marty Supreme, but the table tennis that there is so dramatic. It's like really propulsive, and table tennis is quite a difficult sport to make look dramatic. Timothy Chalamet is just a force of nature through the whole film. He's so hateable and unlikable, in a similar way to what Adam Sandler was in Uncut Gems, and yet you're kind of behind him as he goes through. So the driving force is he needs to get to Japan for this World Championships of table tennis, but he doesn't have any money to get there, and so he goes through various things to get there and various chaotic events. But it's just wild from start to finish. I by the end, like, I don't think I was breathing by the end. It's just so like energetic. It's 2.5 hours, but it just flies by. It doesn't feel like a second has passed. Yeah, I don't know what more to say about it, really. I just loved it. And of this year's awards contenders, it's one of the ones where I'm like, yes. Because I think, I don't know, obviously, I haven't seen the nominations yet for the Oscars. It feels like it's going to be a bit of a weird, not great year at the Oscars. I hope Marty Supreme does really well, because it's great.
It'll get plenty of nominations. Timothée Chalamet will get his lead actor nod. He is not going to win. I'd put money on that now. Although I think he's really good in the film. He has kind of, obviously, because he's him and he's in almost every scene, has overshadowed almost everything else in this film and about it. Which is a shame, because Gwyneth Paltrow is very good in it, but I think one of the real scene-stealing performances that pretty much almost goes toe-to-toe with him, even though she's kind of sidelined in the first half and then kind of actually gets stuff to do in the second half. I'm not fully sure on the pronunciation. Odessa Azion is brilliant in this film. Like, really, really great. I liked it. I think, yeah, the table tennis scenes are great. There is a real propulsiveness to them and a real tension to them that I wasn't expecting. But it is a film that I think it becomes a little bit winding, because initially you just have these very separate kind of events, and then suddenly everything starts to come together, and then one character starts to bleed into another story, and then all these things start to connect, all surrounding the idea of a missing dog. I think it's a little bit winding. It starts to twist around itself a tiny bit, perhaps intentionally, but I can't say that I loved that fact. It's not something that I'm entirely against, but I think it's slightly got in the way for me.
Yeah, I think the genius of it is that the final kind of table tennis conflict, fundamentally zero stakes, and yet it's so tense.
My number... This is one of those that I put in, and because I don't know what you think of this film, to be fair, but I'm...
Oh, God, is this going to be a Lego biopic again?
No, I love that film. That was only number 8. No. This one, simply... my number 3 is Saturday Night.
Oh, okay. You know what? I didn't see it. It just sort of, it came out in a time where I was really busy. I didn't object to seeing it. It looked quite fun.
Okay.
But I can't imagine it tripling my top 10. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Maybe it's remarkable and game-changing, but...
I wasn't expecting to love this, to be fair. I don't really like SNL. There were 1 or 2 good sketches. The rest of them are just terribly unfunny. And in fact, all the SNL stuff in this film is not funny in any way. And I sat there deadpan not laughing. But all the stuff behind the scenes is very funny. And it's just, I mean, in a slightly different way to Marty Supreme, really propulsive and energetic. And it just has this constantly moving, barreling energy. And it's about, the generation who grew up watching TV making a show for the generation who grew up watching TV, and they keep mentioning we want to make something different and revolutionary. And it is a love letter to that without any of the schmaltz, without any of the sentimentality. And it is chaos, but all the disagreements that are happening on set, Chevy Chase being egotistical, John Belushi doesn't want to sign his contract because he wants to be seen as a serious actor, not dressing up as a bumblebee. You've got the cast who are smoking weed backstage, the crew joining them. You've got Nicholas Braun as both Andy Kaufman wandering around in character as Foreign Man and Jim Henson. One is just wandering around, the other is disturbed by the rude material that he's being given. The censor is trying to cut out any form of rude reference. I mean, adjacent to Mary Whitehouse, trying to cut out any rude reference. And there is so much happening, and yet all is so well contained by Jason Reitman and Gil Keenan's screenplay. I think it is so brilliantly tracked and paced and edited. And I've just had such great fun watching it. It is one of the most entertaining, most fun films of the year. And it came completely unexpectedly, but I've seen this a couple of times. I think it is going to be endlessly rewatchable for me. Just full of style and flair, and real brilliance is in there. It is a bright, shiny, as I say, love letter without any of the schmaltz.
That sounds great. I hope that when I get round to it, I enjoy it as much as that.
And on that note, do you want to go to your final song request?
My final song request is a song that I absolutely love and have loved since I was a child when my dad introduced me to it. It is Rhinestone Cowboy by Glenn Campbell.
The final segment / depending on how I edit this when it gets out to broadcast, professionalism at its finest, planning and all that kind of stuff, folks. The kind of top quality content you can consider being taken through 2026, especially when I use sentences like that. I should script this. Anyway, we arrive at the top 2 films of the year, still joined by Tom Beasley, just about hanging in there after I've picked Saturday Night in my top 10 of the year. It's fine, he hasn't
It's all right, I picked Final Destination Bloodlines. So.
Again, this is what it must be like talking to me each year. Your number 2.
My number 2 is Begonia.
Okay, not on my list, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I love Yorgos Lanthimos, and I think the collaboration that he's hit upon with Emma Stone is a really special kind of actor-director pairing of the kind that we don't get as much anymore. We used to get it a lot more. And I think it's interesting in that it's not a film that kind of was born with Lanthimos. He was kind of brought in after the previous director had to drop out. It's also a remake, which is not very, particularly Lanthimos. Not written by one of his regular collaborators, and yet, it immediately feels exquisitely Lanthimos the second it starts. And I thought, Poor Things was just incredible, a film that I absolutely adore and have watched multiple times. Kinds of Kindness, I thought, was irritating and pretentious and about 10 years long, and I didn't like it at all. So I was thrilled when Begonia just completely won me over. So in short, it's the story of 2 conspiracy theorists who kidnap a female CEO, believing her to be an alien. And it's this beautiful takedown of kind of conspiracist America, but also shot through with Lanthimosian unpredictability in the best way. Moments of shocking brutality, moments of incredibly dark humour, Emma Stone being absolutely magnetic as this horrible CEO who is always kind of trying to get out of the situation in which she's found herself. It's completely unpredictable. Every time you think you've got a handle on it, something else turns. And the finale of it is one of the most audacious sequences of the entire year. And in a theme for my list, incredibly bleak. But also, kind of, we talked about this with The Long Walk, incredibly bleak, but with a sort of optimism to it in a really unusual way. Yeah, I just loved it. What a weird, brilliant film.
I love Yorgos as well. I've got to the point where I basically go into Yorgos films the way that people went into the Star Wars sequels, but I just go in basically chanting to myself, going, Yorgos, Yorgos, Yorgos. I love The Favourite. That we spoke about Poor Things. I loved that as well. I liked Kinds of Kindness. It worked for me in kind of like its 3 different takes on classic horror films or genres. And actually, there was one at the end where I went, that was really dark. That was much darker than it seemed while watching it. And I like Begonia. I think it's a good film, a really good film. And yet I can't help but have felt disappointed by it. And I don't fully know why. And I think it's because I went in with too high expectations. I went in because it's a Yorgos film, building myself up, thinking this is just going to be fantastic and great, and it will be in my top 10 of the year. And again, I liked it, but I can't help but have felt... I give it 4 stars. It's pretty good. But I was still kind of disappointed by it. And I think it's not quite winding or anything like that. I think there are certain moments or ideas that can feel a little bit stretched out. It takes a little while to properly kick in and get going. I don't think his off-kilter vibe... I mean, again, the look, the feel, everything kind of works, but I don't think it helps with everything in this film, even when it comes... even though the conspiracy theory stuff fits right into it and has worked pretty well into this film, I don't quite think everything fully lines up in this film for me. And again, I like it, and I haven't seen it since I saw it back in October, but there's something about it that I just felt a little bit disappointed by.
I think one of the threads that runs through my top 10 this year is films that really surprised me. And the thing I've really treasured this year is that feeling of being sat in a cinema, not knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's come up a few times already. It comes up in this film. It will come up very much in my number 1. I love that feeling of not knowing what's going to happen, and that's very much where Begonia sat for me. Yes, it does take a while to get going and a while to kind of find itself. But I think the thing with a Lanthimos film is that they're always so tonally certain. There's a confidence in tone that runs through all of Lanthimos's work, even the stuff I don't like Kinds of Kindness. But yeah, I loved it. I loved it. It completely worked for me, and I found it really funny. And incredibly dark as well.
That's the thing. I think there are moments that it's such a coin toss film as to whether you find it funny or whether you don't. And I was in a screening with people who were finding it riotously funny. Just raucous laughter. And I think it was kind of one of those press screening audiences where it's like, look how funny I find this film. I understand the humour. Shut up.
Yes. And any audience, and it's not just press audience, any audience you watch a Deadpool film with, where it's like performance, it's like everyone's like Captain America going, I understood that reference.
I found bits of it kind of amusing, but again, it's such a coin toss, and I think intentionally so, whether you find it funny or whether you take it seriously. And I took it seriously pretty much all the way through. And maybe that's part of the reason I was disappointed. I didn't quite see or click with possible humour that might have been there. But yeah, I maybe need to revisit it and try and see it as a comedy. My number 2 is one that you've mentioned as well, Memoir of a Snail. I love Adam Elliott's first film, Mary and Max. Like, Mary and Max is for me one of my favourite films, and it's a very important film to me for when it came along and when I first watched it and what it did and what it meant. And Memoir of a Snail was the one film I had to see at LFF technically 2024 now, 2 years ago ish. And it was pre-fest, and I was like, I need to see this, I want to see this, and my friend managed to get me a ticket through his company to see it. And so I sat there, and I had another film afterwards, and I cancelled that film because I just needed to spend time with this film, to sit with it and let it sink in. Yeah. There's a shot in kind of, I think, the first 10 minutes where the main character, Grace, played by Sarah Snook, is surrounded by bullies at a school, and they're taunting her and making fun of her. And she is crouched, huddled up, bundled herself into a ball, and she starts crying in this corner. And imagines a protective snail shell forming around her. And it's a feeling that I understood and identified with and recognised far too well. And I started tearing up at that point, and I pretty much spent the remainder of the film on the verge of tears, because Adam Elliott loves people, and he understands them, and he celebrates them. It's not saying you're an outsider, it's saying you feel like an outsider, and that's okay. You have your quirks, you have your differences, and that's okay. The world can be a horrible, stressful place, but you do have a place in it. And again, there's something about the look of his films that shows that acceptance, about the style, and he can have all of this messaging and yet still come up with quite silly jokes, like like the brother who gets adopted and he gets, basically tortured by his foster family, and it's horrible to see. And yet there's a joke about the fact that the other brothers there are called Dwayne, Wayne, Shane and Ben, and I find that very funny. A really funny, really heartfelt, wonderful film that, again, just had me on the verge of tears all the way throughout.
Yeah, I think the sense of humour is really interesting, because I think it really speaks to a shared humour between Australia and the UK. I don't know, I haven't looked at the American reaction to this film, but I imagine they wouldn't like it as much as we do here, because I think there's such a connective tissue between us and Australia in kind of what we find funny.
Well, we're almost finished with our lists, you'll be glad to know, and then you will be free from me for another year. Your number one film of the year.
Yes, the theme has been horror. The theme has been unpredictability, things that go in directions that you don't expect. My film of the year is the film I probably would have picked going into the year as my film of the year, Weapons.
Okay, I'm going to have to pay you for an extra half hour, Tom. Go ahead.
Weapons is amazing. So obviously, Zach Cregger, who previously made Barbarian, which was another film which kind of constantly shifted itself in front of you. Absolutely killer central concept. One night, 17 children run out of their homes with no explanation. And the film then drops you straight into that and goes, let's watch that drive the town completely insane. Which it does. There's suspicion. All of the children are from the same class, and there's one child from the class who didn't disappear. And there's all of this suspicion on the class teacher, played brilliantly by Julia Garner, all led by mostly by Josh Brolin's character, who is very much the sort of traditional, I don't want to say Trumpian, it's too obvious, but kind of Trumpian American kind of guy. He has a dreamlike vision where he sees an assault rifle looming above a house. But the film is told in this really innovative style where there's different viewpoint characters, and we see the story from each of their perspectives, and it kind of intersects with the other ones. It's not completely novel, it's been done millions of times before, but it really works, and there's such satisfaction in seeing the moments intersect and go, oh, that thing that made no sense there is relevant here. Or even that thing I barely noticed there is really important to one of the other stories. It's constantly reinventing itself as a story in front of your eyes. It's endlessly surprising. Once the jig is up and it's all revealed, it still manages to stick the landing with a really satisfying finale. I think all of the performances are absolutely fantastic. It's horrible when it needs to be. My gold standard when watching a horror film is the chill down the spine scare, which is distinct from a jump scare. And it probably happens to me twice a year watching a film. There were two of them in Weapons, which, given everything else that's going on, the fact it's so purely and viscerally scary as well is just remarkable. I really liked Barbarian. I didn't all the way love it the way some people did. This is wonderful. This is a pretty much perfect horror film. And it's got so much to say. There's the stuff about school shootings is unavoidable. Zach Cregger has talked about it being about alcoholism as well, which it is in lots of it. There's lots of kind of thematic stuff. It's just brilliant. It's like the final boss of mystery horror films, because it's just everything everywhere all at once, he says. It's wonderful. This film is so good.
Did you find it funny?
Sometimes.
Okay, so when the film came out, just before it came out, there were so many people saying it's really, really funny, and it's, a hilarious film as well as really scary. I laughed pretty much at that final sequence. That was the only time. I didn't overly find it very scary. I think it's fine, and I realise I'm in a minority when I say that. It's okay.
The core, this is.
It's fine. I think the thing is, I think my issue lies a lot in the kind of individual segments, which you loved so much, because I don't think they work entirely, because it feels like they're dealing with such separate points, and it's building up one thing going da 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 da, then they overlap and it works, da 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 da, then they overlap. I think it works best when it overlaps and when it kind of is dealing with certain points at once. So when we get Alden Ehrenreich, who should just be in more films, would that it were so simple. When you get him and the drug addict character, who I can't remember who plays him, unfortunately.
Austin Abrams.
Thank you. When you get those characters, particularly because they rely on each other so much, and then he starts to overlap more with Julia Garner's character. When that's happening, I was more engaged and I was more interested in what was happening. Everyone has loved Amy Madigan in this film. I think she's okay in it. I think she's good. I don't think if there are talk that she could actually get into the supporting actress Oscar race.
I think she will be. It's one of those things where she seems to have been sort of the chosen one for the awards push. I don't necessarily think that's right. I don't think she's the best thing in the entire movie. But yeah, everything seems to have orbited around her. I don't know why. But yeah, I loved it. That thing that you're talking about how it builds and builds and builds and then goes back. Zach Cregger obviously loves that, because Barbarian is exactly that as well. Yeah. You watch sort of 2/3 of a film and then you go back to the start of the next film. And I kind of find that whiplash really entertaining. But I can see why it won't work for everyone. Yeah,
it was just as I was settling in, and again, just as they start to cross over. So you get a moment at a petrol station with Julia Garner and Josh Brolin, and then something big happens, and it's suddenly, no, shove off, we're going back to here.
Yes.
And I
love that. It's just so... It's like, I love that whiplash. I love that whiplash so much. Because then when it comes back later, you're like, oh yes, here we are, we're back here.
Yeah, I thought, again, weapons were... And again, I realise I'm in a minority when it comes to this, and that most people loved it, and it is one of their films of the year, and it's one of the most acclaimed films of the year, just not quite for me. I thought it was okay, it was fine, 3 stars, me. Yeah, fine. And I realise I'm being miserable, and I'm being... Probably how I think you will be with my number one, so we kind of match... And it's one of the... Memoir of a Snail has basically been in my top 10 as on falling since October 24. This is the case for my number one. Hard Truths.
Oh, I didn't like it at all. Similar to what you said with Weapons, like, very acclaimed. Loads of people think it's brilliant. I just didn't.
Okay.
I'm not going to stand here and say it's a bad film, because it isn't. But none of what worked for other people worked for me.
I think Marianne Jean-Baptiste should have won, let alone been nominated for the Oscar. To be fair, I think it is probably still the performance of the year. She is fantastic as this kind of bitter, angry woman who goes on these just, again, bitter rants to her family, to anyone who is near her. And sometimes they can be funny and they can be, they can gain a laugh. And then other times, suddenly there's a snap and they become really serious and you feel sympathy for her family. And then it's gradually unravelled that there's even more just tense relationships there, that her relationship with her husband, there's a lot more going on there as well, at least when it comes to him and his behaviour. And it's about the different responses to grief and to tragedy and the way in which we choose to respond to it. And it's initially mentioned what the case is early on in the film very briefly, and then we get this big scene later on, which is kind of the one on the posters and in some of the trailers. That moment where she starts to say, they all hate me, everyone hates me, and worrying and breaking down in the arms of her sister, played by Michelle Austin. There's something about that where everything just comes to the fore in this sudden realisation, and the rest of the film carries that as she views the fact that she has spent the last, 2 years in this way, being very bitter and angry and responding in not the right way, which has led her to believe that everyone hates her and that she is this hateable figure and that she's also been carrying that. And it is a film, as I say, that can be funny, that it really is in tune with the emotions of its characters, as Mike Leigh tends to be because of his process. Didn't know anything going in, and I was really taken in by it. And again, what it had to say about emotional responses and reactions to all kinds of things, and the inheld internalization, even if more positive feelings, the way in which we can internalize those and the way in which they then show to the world, and we let them out in healthy and unhealthy way. And it's so much to do with stuff that I'm interested in and look at quite a bit. Number one of the year, Hard Truths. Feel free to disagree.
Yeah, I do disagree. I wasn't drawn in by it in any way. I do think the performance is wonderful, and I think Marianne Jean-Baptiste is great anyway. And I agree with you that there are some of the things she says are very funny. There are sort of a couple of lines that are just really funny. And like, I don't want to get drawn into the films about bad people thing. She's not a bad person, but films about people who are unpleasant to be around. Because I love a dislikable central character. I've just spoken about Marty Supreme and how much I enjoyed that, even though he's hateable for most of that film. I just found spending time with her exhausting.
No, it is. It absolutely is.
Not in an engaging way. And it's quite a short film. It's only about 90 minutes. But I just found every second of it quite exhausting. Yeah, I think I gave it 3 stars. I think, yeah, it's fine. It's a really great performance in a film that had very little emotional impact on me. But yeah, I was quite glad to see it fade from awards season because it meant I didn't have to think about it. Yeah, I didn't. I thought it was sort of fine, but I found watching it quite exhausting, even at such a brief length. Well, what a weird year when we've both sort of looked at each other's number ones and gone, eh.
Yeah, but most people would agree with you on Weapons. I think most people probably wouldn't have Hard Truths anywhere near their top 10. Do you want to go through your top 10 one more time?
Yes, so my number 10 was Sorry Baby. Number 9 was Sinners. Number 8 was Bring Her Back. Number 7 was The Long Walk. Number 6 was Memoir of a Snail. Number 5 was We Live in Time. Number 4, Final Destination Bloodlines. Number 3, Marty Supreme. Number 2, Begonia. And number 1, Weapons.
Whereas for me, it was 10, Good One, 9, Restless, 8, On Falling, 7, The Ballad of Wallis Island, 6, Train Dreams, 5, Alpha, 4, Sorry Baby, 3, Saturday Night, 2, Memoir of a Snail, and 1, Hard Truths. It's not as chaotic as previous years.
No, and the fact we've shared 2 films, which I think is about par. We usually share kind of 1 or 2, don't we?
Well, Tom, thank you once again for joining me. It's been wonderful to talk to you as always.
Yes, always a pleasure, and always happy to pop by and talk about wonderful films and whatever you've chosen.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Train Dreams, again, it has become something of an awards contender. The Great American Railroad, as some of them put it, and I think this is the point where Grand Central Station's not been built. Maybe some of the great British stations have been built, King's Cross, Paddington, Waterloo, and that's not far down the road. Waterloo Road. Tom, do you want to plug your Waterloo Road podcast?
Yes. So, one of my weird things that I still do is host a podcast going episode by episode through the BBC television series Waterloo Road. In 2025, we completed the old show, finally. And so we're now just sort of doing the new show. So, new series of Waterloo Road, I think, off the top of my head, starts on the 6th of January. So we will be back talking about more Waterloo Road, as ridiculous it is that the show is still going and that we're still talking about it in our little lockdown project. So the podcast is called Everything from Nothing, the Waterloo Road podcast. It is available on all of the lovely places where you get podcasts. And I continue to be baffled and pleasantly surprised by the fact that people are still listening to it.
Tom, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.